Okay, so this is my review of episode 1 of I'll Be Gone in the Dark, the new documentary series on HBO titled Murder Habit. This show is helmed by Liz Garbus. I just want to say off the bat that I'm going into this blind. There's going to be no spoilers here for what actually happens in real life in this story, and let's keep it that way in the comments and the discussion here. I kind of want to keep it as a community where we're watching this episode by episode together, but without spoiling any facts from the case, and enjoy it as it's presented to us as a story. So this is based off the book of the same name, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, by Michelle McNamara, who was married to Patton Oswalt, tragically died a couple years ago. She was a true crime writer. She also was a podcast host, and as we see termed a lot in this show, a citizen detective. She got obsessed with the East Area rapist that she eventually coined herself as the Golden State Killer, who was in the 70s and 80s, his prime time of doing serial rapes, which he did 50 of, and 12 murders. So they do a really good job at starting this off with Michelle McNamara's story and how she got obsessed with this case, basing off a book by a detective that was working on the case, Sudden Terror. And it addressed the elephant in the room and the confusion, like, wait, is this the Zodiac Killer? Because that's the popular case from California in that time. But this is the story that kind of got overshadowed by the Zodiac, and how Michelle McNamara was just appalled how this was such like an interesting case that was just unsolved. And it is a gold mine in a sense for her to find that, and then she follows up on it, does all this incredible research, and they show you that process really well. They show you how she was a pioneer at the time of really starting a blog about true crime and a story unsolved, and the effect and life-changing power the internet has, especially these message boards where we meet these characters like the social worker and the kid, and how they're all working on this and developing this title we see in the show is, like I said before, citizen detective, which is kind of funny and really cool because like anyone could be a citizen detective. You don't get paid for it, but you can literally from the comfort of your home actually solve a murder case, which is pretty amazing. And I think what makes this story unique and original and exciting off the bat is that Michelle McNamara is investigating a case that was never solved from years ago, and you want to know, is she going to solve it? What happened in her time when she was alive, and how she went through that process. What's tricky about how this show is going in episode 1 so far is that this story already is gold in a sense of it's super interesting. If you're into true crime, you're going to want to hear this story, right? It's such a good pitch, like someone who was a huge killer that was not in the limelight, and now we're trying to figure out who it was. That is just hooking on its own, right? But Michelle McNamara is also a very interesting character. So I feel like just from episode 1, I haven't seen the next episodes yet. We'll see how it goes. So this is just an early call, but it seems like the director here and the decisions by Liz Garbus to put so much spotlight on Michelle McNamara, it's good because she's interesting, Michelle McNamara, but it also has a downside, I felt, because this story is so interesting and I really want more of it. And I felt like there was a little bit of it here, but it was a lot of about Michelle McNamara, and I get it's the first episode, it's setting up her backstory, but I think we could have had a little less here because it's so much. So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole series, what becomes a focal point, and if they can get a good balance on it, because this felt a little top-heavy. Hopefully they can get it more even keel as it goes on. I'm hoping that's just because it was the premiere. But you got to be careful with that too, because you really want to hook people in the first episode of docuseries or they'll just leave. But I felt like the hook came at the end of the episode, which was good, and we'll get to that. Now, my biggest disappointment and problem with this is the narration of Michelle's character. This is done by the actress Amy Ryan, who I love. You probably most know her from The Office as Holly. And this could be an issue not solely on her part. We never know these kind of things, whose issue it is. It could be a misstep by Liz Garbus here, but I was so frustrated how hammed up her narration was as Michelle reading the book. Because what highlights that is that you're hearing Michelle's real voice in clips and seeing her in interviews. And there's points in this episode where you're hearing Michelle's real voice, and then you're hearing a narration of as Michelle, but it's Amy Ryan, and it doesn't sound similar, which is fine. It's never going to be exactly the same. But you got to be really careful playing those back to back because it's going to confuse people. But to ham it up makes it seem corny in a way. And that's frustrating, where maybe Amy Ryan and her decisions, or the director, or Liz Garbus running the show really should have made sure, Amy, do not bring this too theatrical. It comes off like she's reading it to a room of children in story time. And it should have, to me, been played more really reserved and way conservative, just to be safe, because you don't want to make it cartoony Michelle version compared to real Michelle version. And maybe you can get away with it better if we don't actually hear Michelle's voice at all, the real version, but hearing it, now we're going to just naturally compare it in our heads, and you're like, wait, that's the same person, and why is this so intense when she talks? I'm going to give you an example of that where it really kind of rolled my eyes was when she was doing the voiceover about first meeting Patton, and she says, like, this guy was funny. More than funny. It's like, that's not how the Michelle we're hearing is talking. And she reads it like a children's story. She's like, more I said. I wouldn't let him go, referring to his impression he was doing. I thought that was so weird and just did not work. So that's probably going to be the headache throughout the series, and I don't think that's going to change, obviously, but if you're going to keep going between her real voice and the narrator voice, it's going to be a tough thing that's going to grind my gears, but this is my big nitpick. But it's important because it is the main voice you're hearing throughout this, so it's super distracting and just off. There's some good quotes they pull from Michelle McNamara herself. I think my favorite episode was her line she wrote on her blog saying, rare moments that he was human will be his downfall in the end, talking about the Golden State Killer. I thought that was a chilling line and makes you think a lot. I like how they explained Michelle McNamara wasn't about the limelight, that she had good intentions here. Where sometimes some true crime narrators, writers, podcasters can make it a lot about them and not about the case, and too angled, where she seemed very just in her motivations for doing this and just loving the craft and just being a drug addict with crime. That was a cool theme they had in this episode, and it really worked. And her talking about when she first got all the actual information of all the cases, the 50 cases, and she ran home and like flew home. It's the same behavior of a drug addict getting their fix. So that just blended so well in this first episode as a theme of her being that addicted to it. There's also some great archival footage in this episode. I thought it was pretty cool seeing the couple detectives working on this case back in the 70s, and you see the Carol detective with the crazy 70s hairdo. That was pretty cool. And her interviewing a victim. So it was like, wow, it's crazy there's even this footage. And another really important footage was that town hall meeting where the sheriff's explaining how to set up a security system with this bell and string, and it's so complicated. No one would actually do that, so you're just like rolling your eyes, probably how the audience was feeling there. And they do a good job of not being too biased, but making you think for yourself. And just from the first episode about the detectives they're interviewing, and that one detective holding the information and not wanting to go public because he was afraid people would be too scared and they wouldn't have enough people to cover it. Maybe that was the wrong move, so you start questioning that. I mean, it didn't go public till the 8th case and 8th victim. What if it went public right away? Maybe stuff could have been prevented. So that's the kind of stuff that gets you thinking about, which worked. Interesting stuff too, where they show that other town hall and only one male showed up. So that says a lot too about just culture, especially at that time in America, and people taking rape cases seriously and what gender it's affecting the most. I think my favorite part of the episode is when they showed the rape survivor of case number 10. They let her speak, and it's a horrifying story about she was 15. You feel in her shoes when she's explaining it. Just being home alone, you skipped a dance because you were sick, and you start wondering, what if I actually went to the dance? Maybe this never would have happened, and you're just home alone, and you're playing the piano, and a man shows up behind you. Just terrifying, and her talking about almost feeling like she was going to die, thinking the couch was going to go on fire, and that she never played piano because she felt like someone would show up behind her. It was just like, woo! Crazy stuff. And they presented it really well. And that's what I'm talking about, where you almost wanted a little more of that, like jump feet first into that a little more, because there was so much Michelle time, which again, first episode, so fine, but I just hope the next isn't that uneven. And like I said earlier, I think the end really worked. It was a hook that makes you want to watch more. The music was really good at the end, and it blended well with the theme set up earlier about her and Patton Oswalt watching the Black Lagoon, and how this creature, the Black Lagoon, relates to this killer and watching his prey, and just being through kind of underground and through the water and through this drainage system. I thought that really was cool, and it was awesome how they closed on the scene from the creature of the Black Lagoon, and this haunting thing about the relation all these neighbors had was this killer. So for me, this premiere gets an 8.4. I think it would have been higher if, again, it was just a little more balanced, and that narration was just toned down a lot, just on the safer side, not the over performance here. So I'm excited for things to come. This story alone enough is interesting. I want to know more about Michelle, what she actually did to get where she ends up with this story, And I'm excited. I think there's a lot of potential here. We'll see where it goes. It's a 6-episode series, so we got 5 more to go. Let me know what you thought of it down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond to as many as I can. And again, no spoilers for what happens in this story. Please, let's just talk about what we've seen so far. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews. I also do celebrity interviews as well. And please follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.